Do you ever wonder why some people seem to command respect effortlessly, while others constantly fight for the smallest acknowledgement? Why certain individuals can silence a room with just their presence, while others shout themselves hoarse and still get ignored? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people refuse to accept. Respect isn't earned through kindness, explanations, or good intentions. It's engineered through something far colder, far more calculated. 500 years ago, a controversial Italian political theorist named Niccolo Machiavelli wrote something that still makes people uncomfortable today. He said it's better to be feared than loved. Most dismiss this as cruel cynicism, but what if he understood something about human nature that we've forgotten? What if the secret to unshakable respect lies not in being nice, but in being untouchable? Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't just some Renaissance troublemaker writing controversial political theory. He was a man who watched kingdoms rise and fall, who saw how power really moved behind palace walls. And what he discovered about human nature was so unsettling that his name literally became synonymous with ruthless cunning. But here's what most people miss about Machiavelli. He wasn't advocating for cruelty for its own sake. He was revealing a psychological truth that we still struggle to accept. People don't respect weakness disguised as virtue. They respect boundaries that cannot be crossed. Think about it in your own life. The boss who tries to be everyone's friend gets walked over. The parent who negotiates with every tantrum loses control. The friend who's always available becomes taken for granted. Meanwhile, the person who maintains clear, unshakable standards, they're the ones people think twice before crossing. This isn't about being mean or manipulative. It's about understanding a fundamental principle of human psychology. We test what appears bendable, and we respect what proves unbreakable. In our modern world, we've been sold this idea that being nice equals being respected, that explanation equals understanding, that endless patience equals strength. But look around. Are the nicest people you know also the most respected? Or are they the ones constantly dealing with boundary crossers, energy vampires, and people who mistake their kindness for weakness? Machiavelli understood something we've forgotten. Respect is not a gift you give someone. It's a fortress you build around yourself. The psychology of testing. Let me tell you what Machiavelli observed about human nature and why it's still brutally accurate today. People test boundaries the way water tests for cracks in a dam. It's not personal, it's instinct. They push, they probe, they calculate, and the moment they sense weakness, they flood through. Think about your last job interview. Did the interviewer respect you more when you desperately explained why you needed the position, or when you calmly demonstrated your value? The answer reveals everything. Desperation invites disrespect. Confidence commands attention. Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by appearances than reality. What he meant is this: people form their opinion of your power before you even demonstrate it. They read your energy, your posture, your willingness to bend. And once they categorize you as weak, every interaction becomes a test to confirm their judgment. I learned this the hard way watching a friend constantly get walked over at work. Smart guy, talented, always trying to help everyone. But he explained himself to death. Sorry, I know you're busy, but maybe if it's not too much trouble. By the time he finished his preamble, people had already mentally dismissed him. Compare that to his colleague who simply said, "I need this by Friday." Same request, completely different energy. Guess who got their deadlines met? The power of strategic silence. Here's where Machiavelli's wisdom gets really interesting. He understood that words often weaken your position, not strengthen it. Every explanation you give hands someone a map of your insecurities. Every justification suggests you're not confident in your position. Let me paint a picture. You're in a meeting. Someone makes a disrespectful comment about your idea. Your instinct: defend yourself, explain why they're wrong, prove your point with more data. But what if you just said nothing? What if you let the silence hang in the air like smoke? that silence creates pressure. The disrespectful person suddenly has to sit with their words echoing in the void. Everyone else feels the tension. And you've just demonstrated something powerful. You don't need their approval to know your worth. Machiavelli called this strategic patience. It's not passivity, it's calculation. You're letting them reveal their character while protecting yours. And here's the psychological kicker. People respect what they can't easily read. Mystery creates authority. I watched this play out perfectly at a dinner party. Someone made a cutting remark about the host's career choice. Instead of getting defensive, the host simply raised an eyebrow, took a sip of wine, and changed the subject. The attacker looked foolish, the host looked unshakable. That's Machiavellian silence. Boundaries as architecture. Machiavelli compared good leadership to architecture. You build strong foundations that can withstand storms. Your personal boundaries are the same. They're not walls to keep people out. They're structures that define how people can safely interact with you. But here's the crucial part. Boundaries without enforcement are just suggestions, and suggestions get ignored. Think about speed limits. They exist on paper, but what makes drivers actually slow down? Speed cameras, traffic cops, consequences. Your personal boundaries work the same way. The enforcement mechanism isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. A freelancer I know struggled for years with clients who paid late, demanded endless revisions, and generally treated her like a doormat. She was talented, hardworking, everything you'd want in a creative partner, but she had no enforcement system. Then she got tired of being nice and getting nowhere. She implemented what I call Machiavellian clarity. Late payments meant work stopped immediately. Scope creep meant additional charges, no discussion. Disrespectful communication meant project termination. Did she lose some clients? Yes. Did the remaining clients suddenly start treating her with respect? Absolutely. Her income doubled within 6 months because she attracted clients who valued professional boundaries.
The strategic use of absence. This is perhaps Machiavelli's most counterintuitive insight. Sometimes your absence speaks louder than your presence. We live in a culture that worships availability, but constant accessibility breeds contempt. Machiavelli observed that princes who made themselves too common lost their mystique. People stopped seeing them as special and started treating them as ordinary. The same principle applies to you. When you're always available, always saying yes, always explaining yourself, you become background noise. But when you strategically withdraw, when you're not available for every crisis, every request, every social gathering, something interesting happens. People start noticing your absence. I know someone who transformed their entire social dynamic this way. They used to be the person everyone called for favors, emotional support, last-minute hangouts. They were exhausted and undervalued. Then they started becoming selectively unavailable. Not rude, not dramatic, just busy with their own priorities. Suddenly, when they did show up, it felt like an event. Their time became valuable because it was scarce. Their opinions carried more weight because they weren't freely distributed to anyone who asked. Fear versus respect. The misunderstood balance. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Machiavelli's famous claim that it's better to be feared than loved. People hear fear and think cruelty, but that's not what he meant. Machiavellian fear isn't about intimidation or aggression, it's about predictable consequences. When people know that crossing your boundaries will cost them something they value, your time, your energy, your presence, they regulate their own behavior. Think about the teachers you respected most in school. Were they the ones who tried to be your friend, or the ones who had clear expectations and followed through consistently? Probably the latter. You didn't fear them personally, you feared disappointing them or facing the natural consequences of not meeting their standards. This is the fear Machiavelli advocated for. The fear of losing access to something valuable. When you become someone worth respecting, people naturally become more careful about how they treat you. Not because you're cruel, but because you're consistent. It's like gravity. You don't negotiate with it, you don't explain it, you simply experience its effects. When your boundaries operate with the same consistency as natural laws, people adapt accordingly. So where does this leave you? Machiavelli's insights weren't meant to turn you into a cold, calculating machine. They were meant to free you from the exhausting cycle of begging for respect you should command naturally. The people who seem effortlessly respected aren't necessarily smarter or more talented than you. They've simply internalized a truth that took me years to accept. Respect is built through consistency, enforced through boundaries, and maintained through strategic distance. You don't have to explain yourself to death. You don't have to be available to everyone. You don't have to sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort. The fortress of respect isn't built with cruelty, it's built with clarity. And once it's built, you'll wonder why you ever thought begging was easier than being unshakable. Here's your homework. For the next week, practice strategic silence. The next time someone tests your boundaries, don't rush to explain or defend. Let the silence do the work. Notice how it changes the dynamic. I want to hear about your experience in the comments below. Did you try the strategic silence? How did it feel? What surprised you most about people's reactions? If this video shifted something in your mindset, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights on building unshakable confidence. Because respect isn't something you chase, it's something you architect.